Xanadu's atmosphere is composed of methane and argon, while the planet's frozen surface is largely potassium with deposits of calcium. Its location in the deep cold of the outer system and the lack of valuable resources leave little to recommend it. Nirvana has a trace atmosphere of xenon and krypton. The surface is a mix of water ice and iron oxides, with cryovolcanic plumes of potassium concentrated around the equatorial ridge. Nirvana has little of commercial or scientific interest. Though a few geological research stations were constructed in the early 2160s, all have been shut down for years. The Alliance maintained an automated ice cracking station, which stockpiled a large amount of deuterium fuel for use by the fleet. This was commandeered in the preparations for the war, and now Nirvana is completely silent. Xion is a hydrogen-helium gas giant even larger than Jupiter. Despite its deep gravity well and lethal radiation, it supports a small helium-3 mining industry. The reason is simple. As the only gas giant in the Utopia system, it is the only local source of fuel for Eden Prime's power stations and spaceports. Xion has 112 natural satellites, ranging from orbital asteroids to the moon of Asphodel, which is large enough to retain a thick atmosphere. Eden Prime. This idyllic Hegarian world was one of the first human colonies established beyond the Charon mass relay. Eden Prime's fertile biosphere drew heavy immigration from the Systems Alliance and other human organisations. In 2183, Eden Prime was attacked by a Geth force led by the rogue Spectre Saron Arterius. Commander Shepard, responding to the attack, encountered a Prothean beacon that warned of imminent Reaper invasion. It is thanks to this beacon and the Commander's quick action that the galaxy has any chance of survival today. Although the Reapers rushed past much of the Exodus cluster in their plan to take Earth, it is clear the war has come to Eden Prime. Distress signals have jammed all available frequencies, fires burn in vast swathes across the arable land, and its once extensive monorail system is twisted metal. Cerberus has much to lose if word of their ruthless attack on the human colony gets out. What they stand to gain must be equally valuable. An unusually large terrestrial world, Arcadia has a dense atmosphere composed of nitrogen and helium. Its scorching hot surface is mainly composed of alkaline basalts, but metal deposits are plentiful. Although several spectacular examples of columnar basalt formation offer scenic beauty, Arcadia's hostile environment has precluded commercial development. Sanctum is proof of the old spacer adage, just because it's a garden world doesn't mean it's a picnic. Freezing ice storms cover the poles and temperate zones, leaving a narrow strip of habitable land at the equator. Dry but windy, this area is home to Sanctum's minimal terrestrial plant life. The planet has yet to develop land-based animals, though invertebrates grow quite large in its pelagic seas. Mining, referred to as ice cracking at anywhere but the equator, is a common employment on Sanctum. The planet is rich in platinum and palladium deposits, as well as boron, which is locally used in semiconductor doping. Travel advisory: carbon dioxide levels on Sanctum can reach 5,000 parts per million during thermal inversions. Travellers should carry a breath mask at all times and consult the Sanctum World Weather Service for warnings. Travel advisory: piracy is at a 14-year global high on Sanctum. Visitors should take appropriate security precautions. Laina, cloaked, is a methane-clouded hothouse planet. Its lack of a metal-rich core and significant magnetosphere allows for an easy scan, which reveals mining equipment on its surface. It can be deduced that this mining occurred within the last 5 years. Any longer and the machines would have been worn down to nothing by the excessive heat and dust storms of hot iron oxide. Named for the 21st century pioneer of groundwater remediation techniques, Kaima Witz is an impressive layer of ice over a stony metallic core. Despite its size, it is only one moon, Noah, which shares its carbonaceous composition, leading astronomers to believe it formed following a giant impact. Iridium deposits have attracted miners to the planet, who must work through robots and telepresence because of the planet's strong gravity. A hydrogen-methane gas giant, Pauling's gravitational field is believed to have cleared most of what would otherwise have been a sizable asteroid belt. The 2163 mission of the space probe Ultimate gave the inhabitants of Watson reams of data reinforcing this theory, giving the colonists an accurate count of its moons, 66, rings, moon-like ring objects, and more than 200 impact craters on the surface of its metallic core. Ultimate has since been retrieved for reuse on subsequent missions within the solar system. Known for its spectacular geysers that can be seen from orbit, Crick is a rock planet with expansive frozen oceans. Though it is within the temperature and pressure range for human habitation, its thick atmosphere is largely composed of carbon dioxide and monoxide, making breath masks or environmental suits mandatory. The most abundant resources for exploitation are the potassium salts found in its seabeds, which fetch good prices on terraforming worlds. Watson is known in human media for two things: its spectacular tides brought on by a large moon, and the bureaucratic snafu over which Earth nations got to settle there first. Watson is a garden world first discovered in 2165, with credit claimed by the Chinese People's Federation, the United North American States, and the European Union. The Systems Alliance brokered the infamous Reykjavik Compromise, allowing limited colonisation from each coalition in cities comprised of populations from each nation. Watson itself trends colder than Earth, with the temperate zone measuring about 30 degrees latitude in either direction from the equator. Its life does not easily map to Earth's evolutionary eras. Some islands have species that resemble terrestrial placental mammals, others are overrun by arthropods. It is estimated that at least 2 more generations of xenozoologists will be needed to properly classify all the species of the planet. A mid-sized rock planet, Darwin is ironically named, being one of the worst places for life in the galaxy. Its atmosphere is punishing, its temperature boiling, and its chemical makeup toxic. Carbon monoxide and methane wrap the planet in an unyielding haze, and scans of its surface show any silicates and molten tin. Its daily thermal fluctuations lead to hurricane-level vortices, 2 at each pole, forming eyes that can be seen from orbit. Despite all this, Darwin is still used by spacers as a drive core discharge point. Hydrogen pierces the clouds in the upper atmosphere, making for a relatively benign approach. An unusually small Pegasid, or hot Jupiter, Wallace was originally an extrasolar planet that entered this system and was captured by the gravity well of the G-class star Skepsis. Tidally locked, Wallace's hot side reaches temperatures over 2,500 degrees Celsius. While it is not large enough proportionate to the star to cause eclipses visible from Watson, it is easily seen at dawn or dusk as one of the brightest objects in the sky. A large moon, Franklin retains a trace atmosphere of carbon dioxide, but its desolate surface holds no signs of water or life. In order to defend Watson from the pirates of the Terminus systems, Franklin is home to 2 Alliance spaceports and naval bases capable of fielding 6 fighter squadrons each and a classified number of interplanetary ballistic missiles. Mass effect fields keep the gravity in its installations at a comfortable level for long-term living. Datriux is a small rock and ice planet with an extremely thin nitrogen-based atmosphere. Exploited for its mineral deposits, the planet's iridium was marked as part of Palaven's strategic reserve during the Krogan rebellions. Its facilities have been maintained to this day. Scans indicate the Reapers did not destroy the surface facilities. It is possible they either did not see them as a threat, or plan on using them for their own purposes. A few Reaper destroyers serve as a skeleton crew here, backed by a capital ship in case the Turians attempt to retake the planet. Essensus is a hydrogen-helium gas giant that was home to a substantial Turian garrison defending the planet's fuel infrastructure. It once held a distribution centre for anti-proton-based fuel, as well as the more common helium-3 collectors. The garrison is now gone. The Reapers drove the Turians off and destroyed all available machinery. The Reapers appear to have moved on. A few Volus ships are now visible, likely present to scavenge the wreckage. The small planet Impera is a hothouse of helium and argon, the latter a product of decaying radioactive materials. Robo-mining was once lucrative here, but like the rest of the solar system, the only remaining veins are inaccessible by cost-effective means. The planet is named for Atrian Impera, the Turian Machiavelli, whose ambitious political philosophies led to her reign as regent in the continent-spanning Neolin Empire for more than a decade. She famously combined citizenship tiers with a meritocracy, rather than a caste system, which served to strengthen her empire. This practice fell in and out of favour for centuries before its revival early in the Turians' age of nation-states. The Reaper invasion largely ignored Impera, sending only a token force to destroy the scientific equipment around the planet. Palaven. The only thing on this planet that isn't silver are the Turians. It's all too clear they were made out of steel. These are Alliance hero John Grissom's impressions of the Turian homeworld Palaven, seen by humans for the first time during the First Contact War. The Turians' martial attitude permeates every aspect of Palaven society, from architecture to art to politics. It's no surprise that their homeworld was never occupied by an invading force until now. The Reapers, aware of their enemy's reputation, brought overwhelming force to Palaven and did not hesitate to bombard cities that resisted, and all of them resisted. The dust and smoke from pulverised cities is now a breathing hazard across much of the planet. Water and power supplies have all but vanished. Still, the fight here has cost the Reapers dearly. Alliance Travel Advisory. Palaven's weak magnetic field means solar radiation levels are greater than those found on other habitable worlds. Human visitors are advised to wear envirosuits or other radiation protection when visiting Palaven. Like the nearby Aventen, Kaelax was named for an ancient philosopher and author. But where Aventen wrote for the military leaders of tomorrow, Kaelax focused on those who feed, clothe, heal and arm the soldier. Her enormous tome, Service, features a lengthy chapter on laws that form the basis for the Turian concept of citizenship tiers. Kaelax is lower in temperature than Aventen, and its minerals were thus exploited first. The Turian defences on Kaelax are not completely destroyed, which is unusual. It may be that remnants of the scattered Turian fleet regrouped using the planet for cover and eliminated the satellite-hunting Reaper destroyers before their mission was complete. More likely, the destroyers found a way to compromise the defences through wireless hacking, and the unmanned drones present now obey the Reapers. Aventen is named for a tactician philosopher whose treatise on leadership is known by every Turian youth who pays attention in class. It is a small, hot rock planet surrounded by a haze of methane and helium. It was thoroughly mined for valuable minerals in the early days of the Turian space age, and since then has had little to offer. Aventen's token spy satellites and defence drones proved no match for even a small Reaper presence, and best reports suggest they've been eliminated. Palaven's largest moon, Monet, has been shrouded in secrecy since the dawn of the Turian space age. During the Krogan rebellions, the hierarchy classified nearly all data on Monet and its sister moon Nanos because they feared the Krogan could use the moons as weapons by smashing them into Palaven's surface. However, some information has leaked out. Images of Turian bases where personnel walk without envirosuits indicate advanced infrastructure, likely a network of subterranean tunnels with powerful Mass Effect field generators that retain heat and atmosphere over swaths of the surface. The Reapers' plans for bombarding the bases were met with fierce resistance by the Turian fleet and the moon's anti-aerospace defences. With their easy victory stalled, the Reapers deployed a variety of ground units to take the bases one at a time. The Turians have the advantage on the moon, but the Reapers have the patience to slowly grind them down. With every base captured, the Reapers deny the Turian fleet another place to repair or refuel. The Citadel. Supposedly constructed by the long-extinct Protheans, this colossal deep space station serves as the capital of the Citadel Council. Gravity is simulated through rotation and is a comfortable 1.02 standard Gs on the wards and a light 0.3 standard Gs on the Presidium ring. Speculas is a relatively large rock and ice planet known for its deposits of magnetically active periclase, which interferes with some starship scans. Conspiracy theories and pulp adventure claim that secret fortresses are concealed under the ice. The Reaper invasion force appears to have passed the planet by, which is likely the only insight that organics will ever have into the Reaper's literary taste. A tiny rock and ice planet that is now missing much of its ice, Elem was part of a grand project by a hegemony dictator known as Grebosh the Mad. His aim was to drop enormous chunks of Elem's ice on the surfaces of otherwise uninhabitable desert planets in the hopes of creating sustainable lakes and seas. Wiser heads than he pointed out that diverting a comet was more plausible, but Grebosh executed those who disagreed with him. Grebosh's career was surprisingly long given his loose grip on reality, mostly because his projects employed large numbers of Batarians. Today, Elem lies abandoned. Hegemony spy drones still orbit the planet, but it is doubtful that anyone on Karshan is paying attention to what data they send back. Verush is a hydrogen-helium gas giant, named for an ancient Batarian monarch whose empire spanned continents. He had such a penchant for mating that 0.6% of modern Batarians claim to trace their lineage back to him. The planet's moons are named after his many recognised wives. The largest, Bera, concealed Prothean ruins that helped the Batarians develop faster than light travel. It is a Batarian point of pride that, since the ruins were damaged by earthquakes, they had less information to go on than other spacefaring species. The Reapers have destroyed all obvious military outposts in Varys' orbit. The Batarians' notorious secrecy, however, may have allowed concealed subterranean facilities on Varys' moons to survive. Kar-Shan, the Batarian homeworld, is wrapped less in mystery than in outright lies. Batarian propaganda claims the world has 15 billion inhabitants and an economy that rivals the Asari. Although the legal slave trade does boost the Batarians' profit somewhat, Citadel sanctions have left a paper tiger of an empire, one that fights rivals through deniable terrorist actions rather than the wars of its heyday centuries ago. The Reapers will likely be the death blow to the Batarian Empire. Almost no information has escaped Kar-Shan since the Reapers destroyed the convoys, but Batarian refugees say that resistance has created a bond amongst the commoners. If a new government can rise from the ashes, that bond may sustain a new Batarian society. A dwarf planet, Desda was explored in the beginnings of the Batarian space age, and mined for its unusual occurrences of uranium, which was rare on Kar-Shan. Whether the planet has been completely mined out is unclear. Accurate data on the planet was lost after a power struggle within the Batarian government. The Reaper attack has further worsened the information flow. A large rock planet, Varna is covered in prodigious amounts of dry ice, leaving only thin traces of gas for its atmosphere. Uranium deposits drew Batarian miners to Varna long ago, and when the uranium was exhausted, they moved on to its magnesium. The Reapers have exterminated the colony here, punching holes in the domed cities and leaving its occupants to asphyxiate. Azamir is a hydrogen-helium gas giant whose gravitational pull perturbs the orbit of two nearby asteroid fields, adding momentum so that asteroids shatter during collisions, rather than accrete into planets. Debris from a great battle can be seen here. Batarian naval ships, merchant ships, and a few Reaper destroyers have been pounded into wreckage. It appears that the Batarian Navy tried to defend the Helium-3 refueling stations, giving civilian ships time to escape the system. Urzbat was a wealthy Batarian colony, rich in farmland, minerals, and manufacturing infrastructure. Little recent information about it has escaped this section of space, but radio traffic from the planet paints a dire picture. Indoctrinated Batarian officials are offering rewards for every living body brought to the labour camps, slaves or not. With the state apparatus at their disposal, Reaper units are coordinating house-to-house hunts for resistant members, and paying those who turn them in. Government propaganda dismisses the smell of the processing ships as a natural byproduct of Reaper energy consumption. Columns of dust from annihilated cities tell the story of those who disobeyed. Jonas, a methane-ammonia ice planet, is believed to be an extrasolar planet captured by its star. It was developed as a fuel depot serving the Pylos cluster. Eldfell Ashland Energy had established its base on one of its moons to crack water ice into hydrogen and oxygen and skim helium-3 from its atmosphere. The Reapers both destroyed the base and abandoned the infrastructure, but not before triggering a trap. A crude nuclear device meant to catch Reapers in its blast. From orbit, the Normandy sensors can pick out a sign that some wag has left on the wreckage of the moon base. Gone fishing! iSail is a standard hydrogen-helium gas giant. Though gas giants are known for their powerful magnetic fields, iSail's field is stronger than current models predict. Within the frost line of its solar system where gas giants do not usually form, iSail is believed to have once been extrasolar. With no infrastructure to speak of, the Reapers have ignored iSail as a military target. The outermost planet of the Acer system, Tamgauta, is remote and largely unexplored. Its carbon dioxide atmosphere has long since frozen into fields of dry ice. A remote rock planet capped in ice, Sheer has been exploited by Arvanen corporations for its minerals. Home to gold veins, used in spaceship shielding as well as jewellery, and cobalt deposits, used in high tensile strength alloys, Sheer's resources show no signs of being exhausted anytime soon. A light gravity helps keep the planetary exportation process cheap. A hydrogen-helium gas giant, Alformus had its helium-3 refueling stations destroyed in an attack by Grow Zero, an anti-population terrorist group that wanted to stop further immigration to Arvuna. A consortium of Arvuna-based corporations are currently rebuilding the stations. Alliance Advisory. Alformus is not considered vital to the stability of the ASA system. Civilians working on the Helium-3 platforms should not expect Alliance military intervention in case of kidnapping or other violence. Mojave is a metallic asteroid in the very sparse Nahata Belt. It has a high nickel and iron content in the form of kamacite. The rights to mine Mojave belong to the TGES Mineral Works, who sell their products primarily to the colonists of Arvuna. A close flyby reveals light emanating from its facilities. A sizable hydrogen-helium gas giant, just on the far side of its pale yellow star's frost line, Drainon is known for its spectacular storms. At least 3 persistent observable spots, actually cyclonic and anticyclonic storms, have lasted for over 544 years, significantly longer than Jupiter's Great Red Spot. The largest of these spots, the Ishna, has consistently held a diameter over 3 times that of Earth. Drainon has 44 moons. 2 of them are of special interest to the Citadel Committee on Habitable Worlds. The first, Arvuna, is a life-bearing world that has already been colonised. The second, Alaya, is slowly being terraformed into an ammonia-based world for Volus populations. Arvuna, a moon of Drainon, is classified as a water world because oceans or ice cover 90% of its surface. Besides its prodigious sea life, Arvuna is home to a host of venomous arthropodal pests in the tropical zone, with metallic carapaces similar to those found on Palaven to resist radiation coming from Drainon's magnetosphere. There are several well-shielded human colonies on Arvuna, although they are alienated from the Council and politically insignificant to the Traverse and Terminus systems. The Reapers have yet to reach Arvuna, concentrating instead on the Baylor system. While this cuts Arvuna off from the cluster's mass relay, it is at least some evidence that the Reapers cannot be everywhere at once. Shasu is a dwarf planet that is believed to have been ejected from Agnin during a giant impact with another planet-sized body. At the time, a magma ocean covered much of Agnin's surface. The liquid rocks sprayed into space, where it coalesced and cooled over millions of years. It is theorised that during this cooling, Shasu orbited Agnin, but was eventually pulled from that orbit by the gravity wells of other planets, primarily Drainon. Today, Shasu is relatively temperate, with a light hydrogen-helium atmosphere that attracts spacers who use its atmosphere to refuel. Its crust composition is similar to Agnin, evident in its high sulfur content. A hothouse planet, Agnin's scorching clouds of methane and sulfur dioxide give the planet a pale green colour in visible light. The sulfur dioxide from volcanic activity rains down as sulfuric acid in the upper atmosphere, but this is boiled away before the liquid reaches the surface. Agnin's harsh environment has prevented exploration by anything except probes. A large planet composed of ice surrounding a rocky core, Partholon retains trace gases of nitrogen and carbon monoxide. Its crushing gravity makes for an inhospitable stay and mining largely unfeasible. However, its orbit's proximity to the mass relay in the system means space travellers will, for the next few years, use it for a gravitational slingshot to add speed on their way to and from Calliston. A tiny rock planet, Elatha is noted for its frigid temperatures and crushing nitrogen and krypton atmosphere. Lying out beyond the Fomor Belt, there is little to recommend it. A member of the Fomor Belt, Brez is a dwarf planet with no atmosphere. It is, however, rich in lithium, which is integral to the heat sinks of many starship and handheld weapons. A large robo-mining operation from Calliston once existed here, but the miners quickly abandoned the area when they learned they were in the path of the Reapers. Cernunnos is a sizable gas giant with high nitrogen content. It is believed to be an extrasolar capture due to its close stellar location. In a rare phenomenon, it is near enough to its red dwarf star to be within the life zone, although its massive size prevents the tidal lock that usually occurs at this range. While nothing could survive on the surface of a planet with such crushing gravity, Cernunnos' moon, Calliston, has life. Cernunnos was skimmed for its abundant hydrogen, and refineries on Calliston processed it into a metastable metallic form for use as a starship fuel. The Reapers have since destroyed this operation. Calliston is the largest satellite of the gas giant Cernunnos. Ancient asteroid strikes deposited major loads of Element Zero within the molten surface mantle. Eldfell Ashlands Energy's mining operations made it the largest source of Starship drive core material in the Attican Traverse, which threatened Calliston's native biodiversity with industrial waste. Calliston is racked with volcanism due to tidal stresses from Cernunnos. Because of the weak solar output, plant-like life on Calliston is not carbon-based and photosynthetic, but silicon-based and thermosynthetic, requiring heat rather than sunlight to power chemical reactions. These organisms flourish in volcanic vents and during solar flares, when Baelor, Calliston's sun, can double or triple in luminosity. Oxygen-breathing habitation is not possible outside its many domed cities. Those cities are now feasts for the Reapers, who drove off Calliston's protective fleet and now threaten to puncture domes to force the population into submission. A methane-soaked gas giant, Rotesk featured helium-3 collection machinery, serving the colonists of Namakli, but it appears their kinetic barriers failed long ago due to neglect. The apparatus was destroyed by meteorites, probably originating in Rotesk's rings, creating one more hurdle for anyone trying to settle on Namakli. Azrahas is a hothouse planet rich in nitrogen, methane and ethane. Similar to Namakli, it is metal poor. Additionally, it is suspected that few asteroid impacts have struck it over the millennia, precluding accessible deposits of common precious metals in the crust. Decrepit Asari orbital stations from scientific expeditions long ago circle the planet. None display signs of occupation. An arid but habitable planet, Namakli was briefly colonised by the Pyrena Corporation, a consortium of Asari colonists and socialised Vorcha labourers. After an economic downturn, however, many Asari left the planet, and the Vorcha population kept growing to the point where they bred faster than they could be educated. Soon they turned violent and uncontrollable, and the colonies essentially self-destructed. Today, Namakli is a wasteland with little population, but Vorcha packs are scattered across the deserts. Settlers frequently run into these packs, discouraging recolonisation. The lack of complex biota and scarcity of profitable metals drove the last few proverbial nails into Namakli's coffin. No one has stepped forth in the last few years with the will, the funding or the firepower to establish a permanent colony. Estag was discovered by a joint Asari-Vorcha exploration team and abandoned shortly thereafter. The planet's light atmosphere of nitrogen and krypton is not overtly hostile to Vorcha, but its heat makes it uninhabitable except in expensive habitats. Its low density precludes the presence of many valuable minerals, and so settling the planet was deemed not worth the effort. Like the other planets in this system, 2181 Eubolos is an unknown quantity. It appears to be a hydrogen-helium gas giant surrounded by the usual complement of moons and rings. Scans reveal no detectable artificial satellites. The rock planet 2181 Arion is only known from space probes, and there are no records of its exploration. It appears to have a moderate atmosphere of hydrogen and helium over an icy surface. 2181 Despoina was only spotted recently by human space probes, and no records indicate it has been explored since. Scans indicate it is covered in an ocean of liquid water and has a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere. It is highly likely to have at least some photosynthetic life. Gylide is a stony dwarf planet of rock and ice, mined for its nickel. It is notable for a recent collision with another asteroid. The residents had several weeks of advance warning and set up recording devices before they evacuated the planet. After selling footage of the asteroid strike to extranet news corporations, the residents found they were now somewhat famous, as well as a little wealthier than before. Of the 221 residents, all but 25 proceeded to leave the nickel business. A modestly sized hydrogen-helium Jovian planet, Dropper is close enough and reflective enough to be seen in Elysium's night sky. It orbits in retrograde, possibly indicating that it was an extrasolar capture. Human and alien consortiums compete fiercely for the rights to gather helium-3 from the planet, since Elysium's favourable position along trade routes means high profits. A large terrestrial planet with wide cold deserts, Sidon has a trace atmosphere that is principally carbon monoxide. Alliance planners found its gravity agreeable, however, and built a small domed research facility on the planet in the 2160s. The project was classified until recently, when Blueson's mercenaries, who allegedly attacked the facility, were apprehended and brought to trial, revealing the facility's existence in open court. Eager to counter the negative publicity, Elysium investment firms now advertise that Sidon is free of military facilities and just minutes away from the garden world, thanks to recent improvements in faster-than-light travel. Whether or not the marketing attracts development remains to be seen. When searching for a colony to retire to, Alliance hero John Grisham said he wanted the one planet where the sun has the decency to set at a reasonable time. Elysium fulfilled this criteria and many more, featuring low gravity, tolerable atmospheric pressure, and a suitable climate. Humans and aliens alike flocked to the alpine paradise early in its colonial years, and the planet remains a vibrant hub for both visitors and permanent residents. Security is a constant concern for Elysium. The planet has suffered several pirate or mercenary attacks, including the Skyllian Blitz of 2176. Elysium's airspace is secured by mobile planetary defense cannons. Its armed starship complement is relatively light. Material and volunteers from Elysium formed part of the Alliance Second Fleet, which was stationed near Arcturus before the fleet was destroyed by the Reapers. Tyre is wrapped in a crushing atmosphere of nitrogen and carbon monoxide that make for a blistering oven of a planet. Clouds of ash from frequent volcanic eruptions trigger frequent lightning storms on the surface, and the majority of its mineral deposits are metal poor, not worth the expense of mining. The stated mission of the John Grisham Academy, commissioned in 2176, is to serve a student population demonstrating excellence and passion for maths, science, and the liberal arts. Its entirely human student body ranges in age from the early teens to the mid-20s. Although the fact is not heavily advertised, the institution also offers classes for students with biotic capability. The school's Ascension project seeks to train these students and integrate them into normal society. Peto, a carbonaceous asteroid, became notable for element zero deposits. The deposits, which indicate Peto was an extrasolar capture, were discovered by the Solarians shortly before they found the mass relay in the Pranesh system. Naturally, all element zero was mined out long ago. The asteroid is named for the clan of Peto il Gainon mal Ineste dut Solum Amar, known to humans as Amar Solum. This shy, retiring eccentric was an undergraduate when more important astrogeologists passed off the first ESO deposits to him. Amar Solum ran the fateful test that discovered the mass-affecting properties of element zero. For 3 centuries after his death, rival clans fought for the credit of the discovery, but the truth won out after a lengthy academic war. Spacer investors are fond of a saying, "You can't exhaust a gas giant," but the Solarians have certainly tried. Halejuice is home to a thriving community of robo-miners and those who work in helium-3 collection and refinement. More than 16 of Halejuice's more metallic moons have been settled. The giant bears the name of the Halejuice Corporation, which combined the best efforts of several Solarian clans to manufacture the advanced shielding necessary to colonize the planet's moons. The planet's magnetosphere retains massive amounts of radioactive ions from Pranesh, the system's star. Because of this, the cities on the moons are under the surface, protected from lethal radiation levels by shielding and thick layers of rock. Halejuice was bought out centuries ago, but the name endures as a symbol of Solarian innovation and cooperation. The tiny rock planet Dragel is notable for its status as a strategic resource of heavy metals. It has been warmed slightly by a thin atmosphere of nitrogen and carbon monoxide, but otherwise remains hostile to life. In the clandestine fashion typical of Solarians, a military outpost orbits the planet, but does not appear on Alliance star maps. Like Saradril, Dragel is named for the matrilineal clan that sent the first manned mission to the planet's surface. However, a thriving minority from the Sylar clan, who sent the first manned mission to orbit the planet, insist to this day that their landing attempt was sabotaged by the Dragels and the planet should bear their name. Relations between the two clans remain tense. The Solarian homeworld of Surkesh has been likened to the jungles of Earth. Pretty to look at, teeming with life, uncomfortable to live in and dangerous to the unwary. The technophilic Solarians had significant pollution and waste problems early in the development of their society. They also embraced social solutions just as quickly, and through complex breeding rules, Surkesh now maintains a crowded but sustainable population. The planet tends to be wetter than Earth, and Solarian cities spare no expense to collect and provide fresh water, as one might expect from an amphibious species. Due to Surkesh's location in the galaxy, far from dark space, it has yet to be invaded by the Reapers, but its rulers are all too aware that they are in the path of attack. Because the Salarians could not strike the first blow against the Reapers, as their military doctrine suggests, many already consider their forces at a severe disadvantage. Surkesh's sister planet Saradril is in a weak hothouse state, retaining enough carbon dioxide and monoxide to form an atmosphere thicker than a garden world, but thinner than a true hothouse planet like Venus. In the early days of Solarian space exploration, the species saw mining the planet as an engineering challenge. When the Solarians made contact with the Asari, the robo-mining industry developed for planets like Saradril quickly became the galactic standard. The planet is named for the Saradril clan, specifically the Solarian Dalatras, Saradril II Sorasan Mal Netia Pator Nura, who sponsored the first manned mission to the planet. In antiquity, the planet was named for various gods, as well as the astronomer who first classified it as a planet rather than a star. But Nura's political machinations won out, and the planet now bears her clan's name on all standard Solarian star maps. The diplomatic ships of the Solarians, Turians and Krogan float far away from one another, out of weapon range. Messages sent by each faction indicate that they would welcome the Normandy as a neutral meeting ground for their diplomats. The fact that they have not agreed on a ship to serve as a neutral meeting point before now does not bode well for the negotiations. Vol is a hydrogen-helium gas giant, named for an ancient Krogan deity that stood watch for enemies of his pantheon. The gas giant's moons are named after some of Vol's myriad eyes and ears. The only reason to visit the Vol system is scientific curiosity, which the Krogan lack. The smaller of Aralak's hydrogen-helium gas giants, Ruum maintains a small helium-3 recovery infrastructure. Although the depth of Ruum's gravity well makes it inefficient to export, visitors to the Aralak system often top off their fuel tanks at Ruum stations. The Council Demilitarization Enforcement Mission, CDEM, maintains a token garrison to monitor any potential sale of fuel to known subversives and terrorists. Scarred by bombardment craters, radioactive rubble, choking ash, salt flats and alkaline seas, Tuchanka can barely support life. Thousands of years ago, life grew in fierce abundance under the F-class star Aralek, a Rate clan word meaning Eye of Wrath. Tree analogues grew in thick jungles, their roots growing out of shallow, silty seas. Life fed upon life in an evolutionary crucible. This world died in nuclear firestorms after the Krogan split the atom. A little ice age of nuclear winter killed off much of the remaining plant life. In recent centuries, many Krogan have returned to their homeworld. The reduced albedo has caused global temperatures to rise. In order to maintain livable temperatures, a vast shroud was assembled at the L1 Lagrange point. It is maintained by the Council Demilitarization Enforcement Mission, which is based on orbiting battle stations. CDEM Advisory. Visitors to Tuchanka land at their own risk. The CDEM will not attempt to extract citizens threatened by clan warfare. Travel Advisory. The ecology of Tuchanka is deadly. Nearly every native species engages in some predatory behaviour. Even the remaining vegetation is carnivorous. Travel beyond guarded areas is strongly discouraged. Kruben is a tidally locked Venusian hothouse, its surface perpetually obscured by clouds of sulphur and carbon dioxides. The first group of Krogan brought into orbit by the Solarian uplift teams requested a trip to Kruben. The Solarians at first thought the Krogan were confused about the nature of Kruben's environment. The planet is named for a Krogan mythological paradise, in which honourable warriors feast on the internal organs of their enemies. In fact, Krogan astronomers had correctly deduced the nature of Kruben in the years before the global Holocaust. In the 2 millennia since, Kruben had come to be thought of as an ideal test of one's toughness. Every year, a few Krogan attempt to land on Kruben and exit their ships naked in an attempt to prove their Kroganhood. The planet's surface is littered with the crushed, corroded remains of their ships. Only one, Shath Norda, is known to have returned from the surface alive, albeit with most of his bones crushed and all 4 of his lungs damaged by sulphuric gas. Norda recovered from his trial to the adulation of his people. Until he died in 1943, he could lie with any fertile female he wished. One of Canaan's hemispheres contains an impact crater 700 kilometres in diameter. Dubbed the Renkat Basin, it was mined for light metals in the interbellum between the Rachni War and Krogan rebellions. Any obvious resource concentrations have long since been stripped. Durak is a small, heat-blasted rock lost in the blinding glare of the star Aralak. It occasionally traps a trace atmosphere of gases blown in on Aralak's powerful solar wind, which inevitably blows the gases back out again. The planetoid has a few valuable lodes of heavy metals, which were sporadically mined by the Krogan at the height of their power. In the closing years of the rebellions, the 5 clans working the planetoid fell to fighting over a particularly rich deposit of iridium. All 5 clan warlords agreed to a crush, a meeting at a neutral location to negotiate a truce. Unfortunately, all 5 arrived planning to betray their fellows. While the leaders and their seconds met, all their bases were destroyed by simultaneous hypervelocity cannon strikes. Left with only the food, water and air in their hard suits, and with no way to call for rescue, the warlords apparently fought each other to the death. The survivors of the 5 Durak clans on Tuchanka still argue about which clan's warlord was the last one standing. Once, Rothla was a large ice dwarf with the statistics listed below. In the waning years of the Krogan rebellions, it was shattered into a field of debris by what is assumed to have been the test of an exotic weapon system. In the wake of the event, the planetoid was reduced to a relatively contained field of thousands of tiny moonlets rotating around one another, colliding and ricocheting. The method used to destroy the planetoid has never been deduced. The Krogan clan who performed the experiment apparently all died in the event. Ships that have travelled to the edge of the event's light cone observed a moment of extreme gravitational lensing around Rothla immediately before its breakup, but no other clues. A popular Extramet meme put forward by Asari author Delsey Orthisa insists that the Turians are covering up the existence of a Krogan superbiotic breed that was genetically engineered within Rothla. The CDEM enforces quarantine around the Rothla field, citing cases of amateur investigators whose ships came to grief in the debris field. Sathgoth is a small ice dwarf with an eccentric orbit. During perigee, portions of its icy surface sublimate into a thin atmosphere of nitrogen and carbon dioxide, which quickly freeze again as it recedes into the outer reaches of the Dranic system. Dor is a conventional methane-ammonia ice giant. It is the main fueling port in the Dranic Cluster Gateway system. Pildea Station, the headquarters for patrol ships of the Council Demilitarization Enforcement Mission, CDEM, lies at the trailing Lagrange point of Dor. The CDEM logs all ships passing through the Krogan demilitarized zone, and has the right to board and search them for contraband at any time and for any reason. There are no exceptions. At points over the last 2 centuries, diplomatic incidents have been caused when the patrol frigates board an Asari hospital ship, a Batarian diplomatic courier, and privately owned human tramp freighters. These measures are provided for under the terms of the Krogan armistice. While the Krogan were allowed to retain their government and personal weapons, any attempt to provide starship-mounted weapons to the clans on Tuchanka is punishable by law. Nearly a millennium after the war ended, the official penalty for smuggling prescribed weapons is still death by spacing. Keelim is a tectonically inert rock with an atmosphere of krypton, xenon and argon. There are a few valuable lodes of light metals scattered across its surface, but these are difficult to find. Most were mined out in the years leading up to the Krogan rebellions. Damkiana, known as the main source of helium-3 in the Mascom-Zul system, is orbited by abandoned recovery stations that the Rachni built during their days of conquest. Because the Rachni trusted in their high tolerance for radiation, the stations were poorly shielded against cosmic rays and have deteriorated over time. The Citadel species built their own stations during the Rachni War, several of which have been maintained to this day. Kash-Shaptu is the first terrestrial planet the Rachni visited after achieving spaceflight. Although most of Kash-Shaptu is composed of silicate materials, the Rachni made an important discovery when they charted the Howling Gulf, an enormous crater near the planet's equator. The depression was caused by the impact of several dozen extrasolar asteroids containing large quantities of element zero. The Rachni took samples of the new element back to Suwon for further study. Centuries later, when the Rachni captured the Citadel expedition that opened the relay to their system, their research on ESO helps them reverse engineer the ship's FTL drives. The Rachni built faster than light vessels of their own and rapidly expanded beyond their own stars. Suwon, the Rachni homeworld, is tidally locked to the system's red dwarf. With one side constantly bombarded by the sun and the other completely frozen, life evolved in the Terminator,
the perpetual twilight zone between Suan's two extremes. The Rachni mainly foraged underground. Suan's abundant subterranean rivers presented them with a place to thrive. Wrestling with the engineering problems of Suan's extreme surface environment may have given the Rachni their first insights into how to build interstellar spacecraft. Suan was the site of the last battle in the Rachni Wars. When Krogan forces bombarded the planet, the Rachni abandoned their surface buildings for the security of their tunnels. The Krogan, resistant to Suan's toxic atmosphere, carried weapons of mass destruction into the secret chambers of the Rachni Queens and detonated explosions so powerful the sinkholes are still visible today. Listening Post X-19 was built shortly after the Rachni Wars, just in case any Rachni survived the annihilation of Suan. The post orbits the mass relay and is still manned and maintained, although today it largely exists as a customs checkpoint for researchers studying the Rachni homeworld. Among members of the Council militaries, being assigned to the station is seen as a form of punishment or exile, considering that there have been no signs of sapient life on Suan for over 1,000 years. Keph is a hydrogen-helium gas giant. Records show that the planet should have a helium-3 mining infrastructure, but scans find nothing of the sort. There are neither abnormal heat sources nor space junk from destroyed refineries. If the infrastructure was removed, it was removed entirely and within the last few years. Inachos is a metallic asteroid. Its surface was once raided for its abundant olivine, which is used for carbon sequestration on heavily populated worlds. More than half of the mass of the asteroid has now been depleted, exposing its relatively pure iron-nickel core. Although Utukku is habitable, extreme temperatures and violent weather have discouraged colonisation. Because the planet has little liquid water to retain heat, surface temperatures regularly oscillate between 70 to -60 degrees centigrade. Utukku's vegetation is notable for having evolved flexible central stalks to survive high-speed winds as well as leathery leaves to shrug off the planet's frequent sandstorms. Animal life is mostly confined to the planet's small oceans. Utukku has few valuable minerals. The Krogan surveying team that first reported back from Maldor said, in a characteristic understatement, that the planet had a bit of the good stuff if you can get past a little acid. Although Maldor's mineral wealth includes uranium, iridium and other heavy metals, miners must contend with crushing gravity and atmosphere, boiling temperatures and clouds of sulfur dioxide. As such, once the planet's most accessible ores were depleted, the mining interests that exploited the planet quickly departed.
Eunomia is largely made of ice frozen around a metal-poor core. Its deposits were of little use to the humans building Arcturus Station, who favoured materials from the asteroids towed into the system. Eunomia lies neglected in the void. There is no obvious Reaper presence here. One of Arcturus's hydrogen-helium gas giants, Irene had infrastructure in place for fueling civilian and military starships with helium-3 and antiprotons. None of this infrastructure has survived the Reapers. A hydrogen-helium gas giant, Themis is one of Arcturus's stable satellites. It rapidly orbits the massive star. Alcyonus is a sizable asteroid, one of many towed through the mass relay to help build Arcturus Station in this metal-poor system. Like many of the asteroids in the belt, miners built small habitats on Alcyonus to live closer to their excavation sites. When the station was finished, a transient population moved in. Belt communities were too small for the Reapers to bother harvesting. Blasts from their weapons pierced the habitat's protective domes and burned through anti-collision kinetic barriers. As far as can be told, the belt's population is now 0. Lying at the L5 Lagrangian point of Themis are the fused metal fragments of Arcturus Station, destroyed by Reaper capital ships. The station once housed the System Alliance Parliament in the nerve centre of their military armada. Now it is a cold grave for 45,000 people. Named for Matthias Silva, leader of the Prospector team that unearthed the Prothean archives on Mars, this ice giant was once home to a large recovery operation for helium-3. In its heyday, the helium-3 flowed freely here to fuel merchant ships commuting from Benning to Arcturus. All infrastructure on Silva has been destroyed, along with the colony on Olivera, its moon. Yukawa is a small rock planet with a thin atmosphere of carbon dioxide. After a labour dispute with companies shipping metallic asteroids to the nearby Arcturus system, Yukawa's iron core and blanket of hematite were briefly mined to aid in the construction of Arcturus Station. Yukawa's reputation as the Scab planet persists to this day, as its other resources are not particularly notable. Benning, the nearest garden world to Arcturus Station, is the primary source of its food supply and an important staging area for Starship maintenance and repair. Occupying the planet would be key in any attempt to retake the system's relay. Scattered intelligence indicates that during the battles of Arcturus and Earth, the Reapers sent a small force to Benning to destroy its convoys, spaceports, and starships. With the population immobilised and communications cut, the main force of the Reapers concentrated on the larger prize, knowing they could return to Benning before repairs could be made or help could arrive. Heat sources in Benning space indicate a non-Reaper presence here. Fermi is a rock wrapped in a haze of carbon dioxide and oxygen, though its temperatures and concentrations make it difficult to support life. Many moons and debris are in its immediate vicinity, leading researchers to believe that at some point Fermi was impacted by something large, launching fragments of the planet into orbit. The wreckage from a scientific station can be detected here, more evidence of the Reaper's presence in the system. Nirrus, a moderate-sized hydrogen-helium gas giant, is of mild interest to Turian scientists because of its abnormal atmospheric composition. The planet has only a fraction of the expected methane, with high levels of carbon monoxide and ethylene instead. A large terrestrial planet, Antinax has been passed over by the Turians and potential investors alike. When the Turians won the planet from the Krogan, they sought to sell mineral rights, but ultimately found no buyers. One survey team dubbed it a stinking world with nothing to recommend it but brimstone and bad steel. And, like Jelix, the planet was soon forgotten. Despite being farther from its parent star than Jelix, Antinax has a thick atmosphere of nitrogen, methane and ethane, greenhouse gases that retain significant heat. There are a few valuable minerals on Antinax, the most abundant being sulfur and iron. Jelix was given to the Krogan after the Rachni Wars, but bitterly contested in the Krogan rebellions and reconquered by the Turians. This left the Turians as caretakers to a levo amino acid-based world that they could not inhabit themselves but were unwilling to give up. In cooperation with the Vol Protectorate, the Turians attempted to rent the planet out for colonisation. Between the high price and a surface littered with unexploded ordnance, however, Jelix found few reputable tenants. Its most notable inhabitants were penal colonies. To those who know of it today, Jelix is a symbol of tragic waste, an entire garden world nearly forgotten by the galaxy at large. Eros is a Turian word meaning overlook or pleasant view, not to be confused with humanity's mythological Eros. The name of the planet refers to its nearly absent atmosphere, allowing visiting probes and rovers a sweeping view of its volcanic mountains. Eros's hematite deposits give the world a reddish colour. The accessible deposits of iron and copper have attracted second-tier Turian and Volus conglomerates that robo-mine the surface. Home to the famous Iron Canyons, Akitas has reddish iron oxide dust, hematite, covering much of its surface, and significant blue cobalt deposits that freckle the terrain. Turian explorers have discovered hot springs in the polar ice caps, heated by magma in the planet's crust. In a strange combination of science and hucksterism, a small facility exports water from these springs, which is bottled and sold as having medicinal properties. The funds are used to maintain a research station, which has discovered some fossil evidence that Akitas once harboured microscopic life, based on deoxyribonucleic acids found in these springs. Though Pytus has a combination of features that make terraforming a possibility, the rights to the planet have been tied up in Citadel Council courts for the past 9 years. The running joke is that by the time the Council finally gives the go-ahead to colonise the planet, Pytus would have evolved life of its own. Home to comfortable temperatures and a mild atmosphere of mostly nitrogen and argon, Pytus could be habitable with the addition of oxygen-producing cyanobacteria. Its crust is high in silicates and carbon, allowing for easy fabrication of construction materials. Smugglers, pirates and other unregistered starships sometimes touch down on Pytus to lay low or make repairs. Civilian travel is not advised. A pressure cooker planet with a thick, nitrogen-heavy atmosphere, Vir is largely ignored by the galactic community. Probes have revealed a crust of nickel and scorched carbon, both of which can be found in abundance elsewhere at far lesser temperatures. Vales has a thin atmosphere of xenon and krypton. Most other materials freeze and fall as snow. Its surface is composed of potassium with deposits of magnesium. While investigating the primitive anaerobic life of Vales, binary helix survey teams discovered a cunningly hidden anchorage belonging to the ancient Krogan warlord Moro. Many records and artifacts of the Krogan rebellions were recovered and sold at auction. The empty base is now abandoned. Marana is an icy planetoid smaller than Earth's moon. Many planetary geologists suspect it was once an Oort cloud ice dwarf that migrated inwards after an encounter with some other body. While the crust is frozen water, deeper layers are mostly silicates, with pockets of magnesium and aluminium. Marana is tidally locked to Pax, the same side always faces the sun. Novaria is a small, frozen terrestrial world, barely habitable by conventional definitions. It is privately chartered by the Novaria Development Corporation, who lease out labs for research too dangerous or controversial to be performed elsewhere. The war has brought significant attention to this otherwise obscure planet. Novaria is home to some of the most advanced research in the galaxy, a sure magnet for Cerberus interest. Further, Novaria's mass relay is the stop between Human's Exodus cluster and the beginning of Solarian space. It is a safe bet that the Solarians will defend their borders to the utmost. Svarog is Pax's only gas giant, but its temperature, powerful winds, and high orbital velocity make it a poor candidate for helium-3 mining. While Novaria enjoys plentiful deuterium for its fusion plants, it imports all of its helium-3 from out-system. Like most Pegasids, Svarog is thought to have formed outside the frost line of its parent star and migrated inward due to an unstable orbit. Its small size compared to the usual hydrogen-helium gas giants is likely due to hydrodynamic escape. Since it orbits closer than 0.015 AU, the planet's atmosphere is likely soon to be consumed. Scientific debate continues on how other planets in the system survived Svarog's migration, as its gravity may have played havoc with them early in their formation. Vilius is a hydrogen-methane ice giant drifting out in the frozen depths. Its orbit hosts rings of rock and ice, as well as many moons, all drawn from what would otherwise be a secondary asteroid field, similar to Sol's Kuiper Belt. Vilius is named for a trickster figure in Asari mythology, a crafty animal called a Manal, that seduces Asari maidens who then give birth to hideously deformed offspring. In the tales, Vilius is caught and punished, but they serve as a warning to young Asari not to initiate a bond with anyone they cannot trust. A hydrogen-helium gas giant, Shastesia is a twin to its more massive neighbour Medicos in more than one sense. The two planets are named for a semi-mythological pair of twins from Asari antiquity, who ruled neighbouring city-states and had a lifelong dialogue about the best form of government. As the legend goes, Shastesia died before her vision of a democratic republic could be realised. Her sister, Medicos, then took up the cause, sacrificing personal power so that all free landowners in her city would have a voice. Although historians doubt that the changes were entirely altruistic, pointing to uprisings that demanded representation, the development was a step towards modern Asari government. Medicos is a medium-sized gas giant. Although its mass exceeds that of Jupiter, the planet is somewhat denser and thus smaller. A large number of moons, planetesimals, and other detritus orbits Medicos, as its gravitational pull has cleared the neighbourhood of material that might otherwise form an asteroid belt. Lymetis is a desertified rock planet with a thin atmosphere of carbon dioxide and monoxide. The surface has water ice, as well as occasional liquid water near volcanic areas. The planet has an abundant supply of zeolites, which the Asari use for water purification, as an ingredient in detergent, and as a shielding material for disposal of radioactive waste. A small colony still maintains the mining equipment. Despite centuries of colonisation, the Asari have developed Lymetis at a modest pace. The planet shows no signs of running out of resources. Lessus is an unpopular garden world, with characteristics just outside of the comfort zone of its Asari population. Its gravity is a little too high, its diseases a little too virulent, and the soil inhospitable for growing food. Further information is difficult to come by. The Asari government is uncharacteristically silent about Lessus. Normally, a garden world settled so long ago would be highly populated, but little light pollution can be seen on Lessus's night side. The rock and ice planet Itis's position was ideal for collecting data on extrasolar activity. According to star charts, the Asari had a small VI-run system of satellites in geosynchronous orbit with the planet. This system broadcast the first warning that Reapers had come through the mass relay, and mangled metal around the planet indicates that the Reapers did not appreciate their presence being advertised. Largely frozen ice except for liquid seas at the equator, Tratogos has the coldest winters of any Asari colony, taking it down near the second tier of habitability. Tratogos' colonists are a hardy bunch, using the freezing winter months to test whether newcomers have what it takes to carve out a life on the planet. Tratogos' colonists are fighting the Reapers in a guerrilla war, their best resource being submarine vehicles that can slip under the sea ice to mask their heat. Unfortunately, these have not proven good tools for taking back population centres from the Reapers, and for now the colonists will have to be satisfied with commando actions to harass their synthetic oppressors. The most temperate planet in this solar system, Sathenia, is a terrestrial world with a light atmosphere of nitrogen and argon. Asari from neighbouring Tratogos built mining operations around the southern pole after discovering mountains with veins of iridium and osmium. The dense atmosphere of nitrogen and carbon monoxide has turned Zosteros into a hothouse of enormous windstorms that blow toxic gases non-stop. Its most valuable deposits are cobalt and polonium, which netted it the number 3 spot on a list of amazingly poisonous planets on the popular vid show Your Awesome Galaxy. The Reapers appear to have destroyed the camera drones here, as well as any scientific stations the Asari may have maintained. Ammit is an enormous hydrogen-helium gas giant with a mass approximately 9 times that of Jupiter and nearly 2,900 times that of Earth. Despite massive pressure, its core has failed to ignite in a fusion reaction, qualifying it as a failed star. It is believed to have captured all of the planet-sized bodies in the solar system as moons or in impact events, leading to its name, Devourer. Not intimidated by this phenomena, the Geth have colonised many of Ammit's moons and skimmed the hydrogen from Ammit's upper atmosphere. Travel advisory: Ammit is in Geth space. All civilian traffic is prohibited. Haza, an ice giant composed primarily of hydrogen and helium, is coloured a striking aquamarine because of small concentrations of methane, water ice and ammonia. Its relatively small size is a curiosity to human astronomers, who would have expected a larger hydrogen-helium giant to have accreted during the solar system's formation. The Quarians have driven the Geth away from the planet's helium-3 fueling machinery, but it is clear the Geth put up a fight. Wreckage from Quarian fighters litters the area, and more than one refueling station appears to have been blown apart by kinetic impacts in a scorched earth tactic. Caddy has a low gravity for a planet of its size, which proved a significant boon to early Quarian explorers. Even before the discovery of mass effect technology, it was easy to extract Caddy's resources. When the Quarians made first contact with the Citadel species and gained access to EZO, profits rose and the orbital stations became a beehive of activity. Today, Caddy's Lagrange points are littered with space junk, including pieces of a Geth orbital station that must have massed at least 500 million tons. Such a station could have generated impressive kinetic barriers, but even these appear to have been insufficient against the Quarians' attack. Adas is marginally warmer than Rannoch, despite being further from its sun. Volcanic activity spews methane into Adas' atmosphere, and this haze retains heat in a greenhouse effect. Historically, the Quarians used the Geth to mine the planet, and when the Geth rebelled, the small Quarian population on and around Adas was quickly overrun. It is clear that the Quarian Armada has not forgotten or forgiven. The remains of Geth space stations litter Adas' orbit, now all shrapnel and fused metal. The Normandy sensors pick up a strange croaking sound, probably some kind of distress call from Geth survivors left floating in space, condemned to the eternal cold. Tycoon's asteroid belt is home to Uriah, a rock large enough to qualify as a binary dwarf planet. Its companion, the asteroid Etiel, is believed to have split off from the main body after an oblique impact. Both were heavily mined in the early age of Quarian space exploration. Curiously, the Geth have built over the old Quarian space stations, even though the mined-out asteroids have little obvious use. The current theory is that they provide a staging base to exploit other asteroids in the belt. Although its orange sun is only about 90% of the mass of Sol and half as luminous, Rannoch is arid by Earth standards because it formed closer to its star and has slightly less ocean coverage. Photosynthetic life is concentrated around rivers and oceans, with large expanses of desert in between. The importance of plant life and shade in ancient Quarian culture is evident in the translation of Rannoch's name, Walled Garden. To a starship's sensors, the most obvious feature of the Quarian homeworld is the numerous heat sources in orbit. Thousands of Geth space stations watch over the planet. Somewhere in this artificial swarm of constructions lurks the Geth Armada, waiting for its moment to attack. Population unknown. Quarian estimates on the number of Geth range from the tens of millions to the single-digit billions. Estimates on the number of Geth consciousnesses stored in servers are far higher. The Migrant Fleet. The flotilla of 50,000 craft holding over 17 million Quarians, the Migrant Fleet is the largest array of spacefaring vessels in the known galaxy. It is a testament to the Quarian strategic skill that these numbers have not dropped significantly during recent battles. The fleet is now on the far side of the star from Rannoch, the better to cloak its movements from the Geth. The Geth debris field. Close to the star, the Normandy scanners can detect a nigh uncountable number of Geth statites, satellites that use solar sails to self-correct their position. The Geth placed the ultralight constructions around the Sun to collect energy, arranged in a vast array known as a Dyson bubble. Scattered among them are space stations and servers that draw power from the statites through wireless energy transfer. Most of the space stations are wreckage now, and no small number of solar sails have also been destroyed. It appears the Quarians began to destroy them, but were stopped before the attack was complete. Scans of the Geth Dreadnought orbiting Rannoch reveal an intimidating array of features, from an improved main gun and ultraviolet anti-ship lasers to increased thruster output. The Geth workforce never demands rest, wages, or autonomy, and in the creation of their flagship, they were limited only by time and raw materials. The damage inflicted so far by the Quarian fleet appears minor at best. Formerly a Quarian colony, Haestrom was established to observe the phenomenon in Dolan, the system's parent star. Dolan appeared to be unstable, with a high possibility of erupting prematurely into a red giant. Haestrom was lost to the Geth in 1896 Christian era. Soon after, all communication from the planet and its attendant space stations ceased. The Geth have shown no signs of treating Dolan as a threat over the past 3 centuries, beyond establishing several space stations near it. Dolan's magnetic eruptions and solar output overwhelm most nearby communications, and it is unclear how the Geth have compensated. Today, spy probe scans indicate extensive orbital construction around Haestrom, housing thousands of Geth platforms and an unknown number of Geth software mines. It is not known how many Geth are on the planet's surface. Spy probes face interference from Dolan, making remote scanning difficult. Resource estimations based on Geth mining, refining and fabricating practices suggest that the planet has at least 20 more years of use before it is exhausted. Intelligence experts speculate that the Geth have not exploited all of their resources because they wish to keep some in reserve for repairs. Travel advisory. Haestrom is a Geth stronghold. Military spy drones using cutting-edge stealth technology are the only vehicles to have returned from Geth space unharmed. All civilian traffic is prohibited. Once a starship refueling station for the Quarians, Chowram has expanded under Geth rule. Thousands of orbital platforms surround the planet and its many moons, refining helium into helium-3. A vast Geth fleet travels between Chowram and Haestrom, preventing all but the most stealthy of spy drones from discovering any information about it. Current estimates place the Geth fleet numbers between 5,000 and 10,000 ships, with unknown levels of armament. Travel advisory. Most intelligence estimates state that approaching Chowram is tantamount to suicide. All civilian traffic is prohibited. The dwarf planet, Gotha has a pressure cooker atmosphere that brings its surface temperature to scorching levels. Carbon dioxide and ethane are plentiful in the planet's hazy atmosphere. There has been some speculation in the mining community as to whether the Quarians mined all of the precious metals before they fled the system some 3 centuries ago. Rumours abound that anyone willing to brave the Geth could find loads of naturally occurring diamonds on Gotha, but this is likely just a starship legend. Travel advisory. Gotha is in Geth space. All civilian traffic is prohibited. The Quarian Envoy Ship. This diplomatic frigate is like no Quarian ship on record. Its hull is relatively low temperature, and it appears to be venting heat in a manner similar to that of the Normandy when it comes out of stealth mode. How the Quarians developed this high-tech vessel is unknown, but its hailing frequencies are open, and welcoming messages are being tight-beamed to the Normandy. Catabolo is a relatively large methane-ammonia ice giant. Although Sione and its orbital stations offer military-grade starship fuel, commercial ships took advantage of the helium-3 refineries here. Because Catabolo was relatively near to the mass relay in the system, the Reapers destroyed the infrastructure on their way to more important targets. Sione. This garden world's claim to military fame is that it was assaulted repeatedly during the Krogan rebellions, but never occupied by more than token forces. The Asari cut off the Krogan supply line at the Citadel relay and drove the invaders out. Today, antimatter generators on the surface and in orbital stations provide fuel for military starships throughout Asari space. The matriarchs defending the planet today have vowed to maintain Sione's legacy. They pledge it will fall to no enemy, organic or synthetic. Early surveyors of Hanalei dismissed its resource potential, saying it had more heat than a planet needs and more argon than a galaxy would buy. As an enormous terrestrial planet buried under a merciless atmosphere of argon, nitrogen and carbon dioxide, Hanalei hosted only small orbital stations that were primarily scientific in nature. The facilities have since been destroyed by the Reapers. When Dacuna's government learned that the Reapers had returned, they evacuated everyone on Sangle's helium-3 recovery platforms. The sizable hydrogen-helium gas giant was abandoned, its workers relocated to Dacuna. The move was ostensibly made because the Elcor homeworld was in a more defensible position. In reality, it may have been motivated by a subconscious herding instinct, as most grazing creatures come together in large groups when predators near. Tel Yun is named after the first Elcor settlement in recorded history. The planet's name roughly translates to the deep and restful meadowland, which is somewhat of a misnomer given that Tel Yun's thick, crushing atmosphere keeps its surface boiling hot and the air is a noxious mixture of carbon dioxide and helium. The Elcor homeworld, Dacuna, overflows with natural resources protected by law, from large deposits of precious metals to vast forests. The Elcor themselves live in rich grasslands near the equator. The majority of Dacuna's settlements are tucked within this belt, as the conservative Elcor feel little desire to build outside their comfort zone. Their twin capitals are for migrations from the wet season to the dry season, a tradition made obsolete by modern technology but still observed. After the destruction of the Elcor navy, Reapers moved in their ground troops to occupy the cities. This has taken longer than most civilized worlds, as the Elcor have spread out into smaller, distant settlements, reflecting their preference for close-knit family communities instead of densely packed cities. Nanuamun's scorching hot surface is composed of lime with deposits of copper. It has faint traces of a nitrogen atmosphere. The Elcor have left it untouched, aside from the orbital probes that monitor the planet in case anything noteworthy should one day occur. The first mission to Oltan, Dacuna's moon, was a century in the making. Elcor leaders felt resources for space travel could be better used on their homeworld, and it took decades of persuasion to secure project funding. Archaic harvesting stations that recovered helium-3 from the moon's regolith were still functioning when the Reapers invaded, and the Elcor stationed there were able to flee the system. Tavura is a hydrogen-methane ice giant with a core of frozen ammonia and trace hydrocarbons. The world is named for an ancient Asari goddess of love, sex, travel and law, spheres of influence whose overlap initially baffled human xenoanthropologists. Asari reproductive instincts are strongly exogamous, and before alien contact, their instincts sent the Asari roaming outside their kinship groups to avoid mating with relatives. The journeys necessitated a system of rules governing guests, fugitives and alliances, all watched over by the goddess Tavura. The Reapers have ignored Tavura so far, its science stations and moon-based mining equipment offering little strategic importance. It is likely that a destroyer will eventually be sent here to exterminate any civilians. Athame is a hydrogen-helium gas giant with spectacular rings. The planet's apparent magnitude varies when seen from Thessia based on atmospheric conditions and relative distance. To the ancient Asari, the mysterious star that shone in some months and disappeared in others was linked to fortune, and so it was named Athame, after the matriarch of the pantheon and a goddess of prophecy and fate. Ethame's worship changed over time, eventually becoming the basis for a monotheistic religion in which her maiden, matron and matriarch aspects oversaw all stages and roles in Asari society. When an Asari says, "by the goddess," they are referring to Ethame. Like Janiri, the planet Ethame served as a rally point during the Reaper invasion, where fleeing Asari ships could discharge their drive cores so that they could make another FTL jump. The Reapers were forced to chase the Asari away from Ethame, buying Thessia valuable time. Janiri is a hydrogen-helium gas giant, named for an ancient Asari goddess of seasons, storms and agriculture. With the advent of the Siari religion, Janiri's holy day Janirius became largely secular, but it is still celebrated on worlds with Asari influence. During the Reaper attack on Thessia, the Asari Armada used Janiri as a staging base for their hit-and-run attacks on the invading Reapers, striking, jumping to FTL to lose pursuers, and discharging the static into Janiri's magnetic field as they prepared for another attack. This forced the Reapers to mount a counter-offensive to drive the Asari away from Janiri, using ships that would otherwise have been hammering Thessia itself. A large reflective asteroid, Lucen is almost visible in Thessia's night sky, and was discovered soon after the Asari developed optics. When the Space Age finally arrived, the rocky asteroid was among the first to be mined for its valuable deposits of platinum group metals. Lucen is named for the servant of the goddess Ethame, who beseeched the goddess for the gift of poetry, forging and biotics. Lucen then sailed the sea and sky teaching these gifts to mortals. It is said that the aging powerful matriarch begged Ethame for the gift of prophecy, so that she would see whether the Asari would prosper in the future. Ethame refused, prophecy being hers alone, and when Lucen tried to steal it from Ethame's silver jars, Ethame struck her down. The Reapers have so far ignored the mining facility on Lucen, as it offers little strategic value and is far from the system's mass relay. Pierres, the lifeless sister planet to Thessia, lacks water or oxygen. It is covered instead with deserts, the air a mix of carbon dioxide and ethane. The manageable temperatures and gravity on Pierres led to heavy exploitation for mineral wealth in the beginnings of the Asari Space Age. Today, Pierres is largely mined out. Pierres is named for an ancient Asari goddess of death, who was not seen as a malefic figure, but as one who guided Asari spirits on their final journey. From her home in the stars, she could grant an Asari who had lost a lover the ability to restore them to life in another body. This legend, heavily modified, formed the basis for a recent, highly profitable human sim called Nekia Corridor. The Reapers targeted Pierres from orbit, its population too small to bother harvesting. Wreckage of the old domed cities and spaceports dot the landscape. The Asari homeworld of Thessia has been called the crown jewel of the galaxy, the apex of democracy, and the beating heart of galactic love. Its republics have a remarkably low incidence of war, disease, violent crime or famine, riding a stable economy backed by wealthy colonies and Thessia's vast element zero reserves. Traces of Ezo in the water and soil are so common that most life on Thessia has adapted to its presence. Thessia's fortunes have been upended by the Reaper assault. The communications infrastructure that forms the backbone of the society's e-democracies has been eliminated. Millions are without power, water or food, and moved to coerce the Asari into widespread surrender. This is a necessary part of the Reaper strategy, since husks alone have difficulty disarming or capturing a population full of biotics. Wrapped in a crushing haze of hydrogen and methane, Corinth is named for an Asari goddess of war and hunting, the two being similar in the Asari mindset. The planet is particularly bright in Thessia's morning and evening skies, enough to cast noticeable shadows on moonless nights. Understandably, warriors and hunters operating at night were grateful for Corinth's blessing. The planet was never heavily exploited for minerals. Early Asari explorers focused on the asteroid belt, and by the time robo-mining machines were created that could withstand the intense heat, more lucrative planets were already on the star charts. Modern charts record several scientific stations orbiting the planet, but it appears that all have been destroyed by the Reapers. Perched on the outer edge of Iera's small solar system, Watchman is a mid-sized rock and ice planet that has picked up a dozen moon-sized objects. Its nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere is too thin to support life, with solid ice covering its calcium-heavy rocky core. The footprints of Watchman's first surveyors can still be seen on its practically airless surface. The planet, devoid of valuable resources, has seen few visitors since. A temperate world that has hit the sweet spot for carbon-based life,
Horizon has a nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere maintained by abundant plants and bacteria. Its soil is particularly compatible with Earth vegetation, and so a thriving human community has sprung up. Horizon's population is in flux. A collector attack in 2185 inflicted significant casualties, but refugees have been streaming to the planet since the Reaper invasion began. Since many land illegally, there is no way to accurately track the population. Although many colonists resent the newcomers, others have embraced Horizon's new role. Advertisements for Sanctuary, its main refugee centre, can be seen galaxy-wide. Prospect is a hydrogen-nitrogen gas giant with 13 known moons. Early scans of the moons revealed dense deposits of heavy metals, prompting a resource rush by colonists from Horizon. Unfortunately, a galactic uranium surplus drove half of the mining firms out of business, and the moon's surfaces are littered with the bodies of executives who committed suicide by airlock. Today's mining corporations hold more diversified and sustainable portfolios. Prospect is within the frost line of its solar system, where ice giants do not normally form. For this reason, it is believed to have been an extrasolar capture. Venture is a pressure cooker of a planet, but its thick nitrogen-based atmosphere is also the source of wealth for a small colonist industry. Although Venture's high temperatures are brutal, the primordial soup is not as acidic as on other hothouse planets. This allows recovery bots to collect xenon from the lower troposphere. This xenon is then sold for use in ion drives and some electric lights. Venture's gravity is relatively low for a planet of its size, making the recovery more economical than would otherwise be expected. The Emla Red Supergiant Anadius is a minor footnote on the star maps of the Horsehead Nebula, a cold, dying star of about 20 solar masses and 1500 times Sol's radius. Not listed on any charts, an unobtrusive space station is nearly imperceptible in the star's periodic bursts of solar output. Edie's advisory: the size and shape of the station suggest many ships could dock in it. Precise measurements would require active scans, which could reveal a Normandy's presence. Given the stakes, this level of accuracy is not recommended. Sesmos is an ice dwarf world, its surface composed almost entirely of frozen water. Normally, a planetoid this small would not rate inclusion on the system's charts, but Sesmos' unusually large and beautiful rings of ice crystals has made it a popular subject for visual artists. This ring is the result of a glancing equatorial impact, which left a large trench and threw a large amount of melted water into the atmosphere. The rings are a temporary feature that will completely decay in a few thousand years. Junkro is a hydrogen-helium gas giant with traces of chlorine and sodium in its upper atmosphere. Like Uranus in the Sol system, it is tipped on its side, its north pole facing the star Newton. Clencori is a rock and ice planet with an atmosphere composed of chlorine and argon. The frozen surface is mainly composed of potassium with deposits of iron. Clencori is famously claimed by the eccentric Volus billionaire Kuman Scholl. His once ridiculed visions of beings of light protecting organic life from synthetic machine devils don't seem quite so far-fetched now. His private army of mercenaries are well established on the planet, waiting for husks to come knocking on their front door. In all likelihood, they will be obliterated by the molten metal of a Reaper orbital bombardment on its way to somewhere important. This habitable world had been living in the shadow of disaster long before the Reaper War. Its moon's orbit is decaying, causing tidal disruptions and electrical storms before its eventual collision. When humans settled on Ontarom, the Asari derided it as foolish, but today the humans look prescient. The communications hub they set up on the planet has hundreds of quantum communicators, whose information is spread through broadcast on the planet and beamed out via convoy. While Ontarom has yet to be attacked by Reaper forces, it is likely just a matter of time.